Good afternoon and welcome to this session on Horizon Europe Work Programme 21-2022 for the cluster on climate, energy and mobility. I will introduce you to Destination 1 on climate sciences and responses for the transformation towards climate neutrality. First, by setting up defining the policy context. The European Green Deal that you all heard about, probably, defines the European Commission's vision towards a climate neutral Europe by 2050. And it calls for the pivotal role of research and innovation to realize this. The transformation is going on, is being launched, and you can, through these calls, contribute to this massive change that we expect in the coming years and decades. Climate mitigation ambition for 2030 was enhanced to 55% reduction of greenhouse gas emission from 1990 level, including the amendment of existing instruments and introduction of new ones. The package called Fit for 55 will come out in a few weeks, and it's massive and impressive. The transformation is ongoing and you can contribute. I'm repeating this message, which I find quite important. The European climate law enshrines into legislation the climate neutrality objective. It's a legally binding target at net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2050. This is also a novelty and an important one to set the objectives in the legislation. The new EU strategy on adaptation to climate change was adopted last February and made a number of leaders and local actors also realize that we must adapt and build resilience to the unavoidable consequences of climate change. Moreover, the mission on adaptation to climate change aims to mobilize stakeholders and resources to accelerate the demonstration and scale up of existing solutions for climate resilience. The increasing recognition that the multiple challenges such as climate, biodiversity, and resource constraints cannot be tackled in isolation, but actions must be mutually reinforcing, and this needs to happen on the ground. Next slide, please. With regard to Destination 1, climate sciences and responses for the transformation towards climate neutrality, the overall expected impacts, as I introduced somehow, the transition to, it should enable through advanced climate science, pathways and responses to climate change, both on mitigation and adaptation to climate change, and also address behavioral transformation. We have first, the objective to advance knowledge and provide solution in Earth system science on pathways to climate neutrality, address climate change adaptation, including climate services, social science for climate action, and better understanding of climate ecosystem interactions. This is certainly not new to you who are watching this, but what is the difference from the past is now the effort is really enhanced, and we need to accelerate also the time from the development of the concept, the knowledge, the solutions, and their transfer and deployment in society. This is the key challenge. Also, with regard to the impacts, the work that you will do need to contribute to key international assessments on climate science, of course, such as in the Ipcc. It should contribute to strengthening the European research area on climate change. And finally, it needs to increase the transparency, robustness, trustworthiness, and practical usability of the knowledge base on climate change for policymakers, practitioners, and all citizens, because we are all engaged in this transformation. I wish you a good reflection and preparation of your proposal, and I wish you all success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Hello, am I on now? Thank you very much, Philippe. Okay, so welcome again also from my side to this info day for Cluster 5 Destination 1. So we heard a good introduction by Philippe. My name is Franz Simmler. I work in the Executive Agency for Climate infrastructure environment, and that's a bit the new kid on the block. So I was thinking I will take 1 minute to explain who we are. Next slide, please. So this executive agency is kind of a merger of the INEA executive agency and IASME, and it's implementing a full range of different EU programs, including, for example, the Connecting Europe facility, the LIFE program, the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, and Horizon Europe, and from Horizon Europe, Cluster 5, so the entire cluster. So CINEA is, next slide, please, so slide number 3. CINEA is the agency which could be called the agency for implementing the Green Deal policy, because all these programs that I just mentioned play a very important role for this policy, for the Green Deal, as we are funding, as Philip just mentioned, innovation and research for climate, for new infrastructure, for mobility, for energy transition. And our goal is, so we are the focal point for this type of activities, and we are really engaging with beneficiaries. We are the people who you will deal with if you submit a proposal, if you run a project. But basically those of you who have been already engaged in Horizon 2020, in the climate domain and Societal Challenge 5, as it was called, you know us because we are the same people. We just moved to a new agency. So you probably know me or my team, Frederick Akou, who is with us as the Slido moderator. And all the others from my team, they are still with us. And so we are running the evaluations, but then also prepare the grant agreements and monitor projects. So if you are successful, it's us you will be dealing with. So with that, I would like to, 1 minute, come to the topic. So we will present 17 topics in this session, so quite a dense program. We have three different calls. We will go call by call. So the first call with 9 topics is the 2021 call. And after that, we will have a Q&A session. You can type your questions in Slido, and I will explain in a minute how you can work this. So we have first Q&A after the first 9 topics, and then we present the 2-stage call. We will answer your questions after that, and then we have the final third call, which is the single-stage call 2022, and again, then there's Q&A. So you do see Slido at the right side of your screen, or you can open a separate tab, and there you can type in your questions anytime. But please put the identifier of the call topic that your question refers to, so we can clearly allocate. We know which topic you refer to exactly, and I can allocate the right person to answer your question. Okay, so to get started with Slido, I would like to launch a poll to see a bit who is there, who is out there watching us, which indeed is not so easy to see from here. So if we can launch the poll now, please. I would like to know what affiliation you're from, where you work. Is it more the private sector, so a business, an SME, or something like that? Do you work for a research organization? Are you a scientist, basically? So that includes also university. Or are you from a national contact point, or actually any other sort of intermediate between the program, us, and the scientists or the people writing the proposals? So if you are kind of a contact point or a counselor, a consultant for a proposal, then it's answer 3. And if nothing applies, then please answer other. So we wait a few minutes for the polls to come in. I don't see anything what you see, so it's a bit difficult for me to understand where we are. And do we see results? Okay, I hope I see the results later. And I don't see it. Okay, here they are, indeed. So now I can see something. Okay, so we have quite a lot of researchers here. That's good. National contact points, 18, private sector, not so many, but some. That's also good. So thanks all. That was also to get you a bit into using Slido. We have 53 people answering. That's not a hell of a lot. So I think we can do better. Please use Slido for answering questions. This is the opportunity for you to get in direct touch with the Commission staff. And with that, I would introduce our first speaker. So we start with call number CL5 2021 D1, that stands for Destination 1, then 01, so that's the first and only call of 2021. And then we have 01 again, that's the topic number, so topic number 1. And that topic will be presented by Miles Perry. Miles works in DG Klima. He was involved in the co-design. I see Miles is here now in the co-design group. So all topics were co-designed, as you probably know. And Miles was one of the people involved, and he was mainly involved in topic 1 and a later topic. Miles, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear and I see you.
Great.
That's good. So please go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I imagine some slides will appear on the screen very shortly. So yeah, I'm Miles Perry from DG Climate Action. I've been one of the people involved in the design of Cluster 5 calls, and different colleagues from different DGs will be speaking throughout this afternoon. So this call, understanding greenhouse gas fluxes and radiative forces, it's essentially the most blue sky of the climate science calls, the one that's asking about climate science, not specifically tied to developments of EU policies or individual technologies. So that's a good introduction. Next slide, please. So instead, the topic aims at filling fundamental gaps in our understanding of the Earth system. And so you can see on the screen the expected outcomes. So improved knowledge, better understanding of processes driving climate change, especially leading to improved ability to make projections, including in relation to extreme events. Better understanding as well about the difference that mitigation actions make to stabilize the global temperature. And as well, although it's one of the most, if not the most upstream call, it's important that the insights are generated in such a way that they can feed into improvements in Earth system models, climate services, and other forms of downstream use. So next slide, please. Although it is one of the most upstream topics in this cluster 5, you can see that we've grouped it into three areas. So requesting proposals on each proposal should address one of these. One is greenhouse gas fluxes and Earth system feedbacks. So improved knowledge of what's going on in the carbon and climate cycles, including related to greenhouse gases and other forces, and feedbacks and different time horizons. The second is about it's more specifically focused on non-CO2, and in particular the forces which aren't as well understood as some of the others, including how they interact And this is because we've noticed that seems to be quite an important knowledge gap also with application to lots of different areas of climate and environment policy. And I think that needs to be demonstrated in the call as well, that it has some kind of real world application. But at the same time, the call isn't aimed at solving any particular issue about whether it be air quality or anything like that. I think it's for the proposals to demonstrate this. And then finally, a call on climate neutrality and net negative emissions. So I think there are various calls throughout Cluster 5 and possibly even beyond that have something to do with either carbon capture and storage or carbon dioxide removal. And this call, this topic is about just improving the basic climate science related to this. So, there's been lots of discussion about net zero. What does net zero really mean? What collection of gases are we talking about? Of what time scale would it stabilize the climate? Would it really stabilize the climate? What happens after that, etc. So as you can see, there's a total budget of 24 million, 8 million per project. International cooperation is encouraged. And there are obviously links to all sorts of more downstream climate science, and there are more particular calls on things like the system models and what CDR arrangements might look like in practice and this kind of thing coming up in 2022 work program. Okay, so that's it from me.
Okay, thank you very much, Miles. I have an important note here to make, since you noticed that there are 3 subtopics in this topic. Actually, Horizon Europe's submission system does not really allow subtopics, so you will not be able to submit a proposal to a specific subtopic, only to the topic as such. So please, if you submit, but still you should submit to one of those 3 areas indicated in the topic. Please make clear in the abstract of your proposal to which of these 3 subtopics your proposal refers to. That's important. Okay. With that, I move on directly to the next speaker, and the next speaker is Jesus Alquizar Sabadi. He works in DG Environment, and he will present topic number 2. Please, Jesus.
Sorry for this. So thank you very much, Franz. So I think the best to introduce this topic is to explain a little bit the background. If you look, for example, at the first Circular Economy Action Plan and the different Ipcc reports, you will see that there are some references in the Circular Economy Action Plan to climate, and in the Ipcc, you rarely find any mention to the circular economy. But in the last years, and this is a relatively new topic, both politically and in scientific reports and publications, the link between the circular economy and climate has been really underlined and shown, demonstrated. For example, there were different seminal studies from Material Economics and CITRA, from the International Resource Panel, showing how the circular economy can contribute to decarbonization. Also, the Commission acknowledged this link, but except in the long-term strategy published some years ago, this impact of the circular economy to decarbonization is not modelized, or it doesn't provide, the policy doesn't provide estimates of the actual impact quantified. This is due to different methodological problems, different approaches, etc., and there is not really a scientific consensus about this. This is why we consider that this is a very relevant topic, because we can, on the one hand, make science advance in this area. So there is a very strong research component, but also we want really to contribute through this research to the policy development. In particular, if we look only to the European Union policy framework, to the integration of circular economy modeling, so the circular economy modeling calculating or estimating the impacts on decarbonization, to this integration into the suite or the framework of models that the Commission uses for different impact assessments. For example, the 2030 climate target plan. So it's important not only to develop the science here, and this is really key, but also to connect the scientific community with the policymakers and, as you can see in the description of the topic, also with the civil society. And there is a last paragraph also in the description of the topic that is, I think, it deserves being underlined. That is this importance of transparency. So we need to develop this modeling in a transparent way for science, for policy, but also for the citizens that we all are. So we need also to show to citizens what we are planning to do. So this is, I think, the description of what we plan to do. And of course, I will be happy to answer very more specific questions in the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jesus. And now we move directly on, and we will see now Olivia Lebulch from DG RTD presenting topic number 3, maximizing the impact.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will present to you a topic from Cluster 5, Destination 1 on maximizing the impact and synergy of European climate change research and innovation. This topic is a coordination and support action. Under this topic, projects are expected to contribute to some of the following expected outcomes. Raising awareness of a large audience on climate change with more efficient, engaging and innovative communication on climate change science stemming from EU-funded projects. Better coordination of ongoing and future climate change research initiatives. This implies more impact and synergies between communication, dissemination and exploitation activities of the portfolio of EU-funded projects. Enhanced impact of climate research and innovation investments, accelerated transfer of knowledge and increased uptake of solutions, improved visibility and more targeted information on EU-funded projects, increased use of innovative and tailor-made communication tools and strategies for citizens' engagement and more sustainable behaviors, better coordination, synergy, complementarity and efficiency of climate change research and innovation within the European research area, improved prioritization of EU climate change research and innovation, and finally, better stock-taking, showcasing, uptake and scale-up of research and innovation solutions across Europe. Regarding the scope, activities will strengthen the science policy and science society interfaces on climate change research and innovation to support decision-making and action. Actions should cover one of the following areas. The first area focuses on maximizing the impact of EU-funded climate change research at European level. This implies knowledge synthesis, valorization of results like curation, clustering, joint program publications and briefings, and the identification of research needs. Activities are expected to build on and create synergies with existing knowledge, tools and platforms. They will encompass climate, mitigation and adaptation science produced by EU-funded projects Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. Actions will go beyond standard communication and dissemination practices, for example, with innovative education methods, the use of digital tools and social media. Under the second area, which focuses on maximizing the synergy of climate change research and innovation in Europe. Projects will concentrate on the national, regional levels. They will ensure coordination and synergies on climate change research and innovation planning and activities across the European research area. Actions will facilitate the dialogue, information exchange, and cooperation among climate change scientific communities, funding bodies, practitioners. Activities will support the Commission services in the identification of research needs, the identification of priority topics based on knowledge gaps and societal needs, and enable their inclusion in national and regional strategies. Activities will also improve access to and scale up good practices on the communication, dissemination, and exploitation of projects' results, for example, with comparative reports on national and regional research and innovation policies addressing climate change. Finally, this area includes the organization of the future ECA conference on climate adaptation. Regarding the indicative budget, projects are the contribution per project is between 4 and 5 million euro, and the total budget for the topic is 9 million euro. Last but not least, it will be important that the proposals clearly specify to which area they are applying, and the coordination between the two areas is strongly encouraged. Thank you very much for your attention, and good luck with the proposals.
Thank you, Olivia. It wasn't me interfering here. And we move on. Miles is back with topic number 4, enhanced integration assessment in pursuit of global climate goals. Miles, you're again.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, again. So I'm delighted to be back and presenting this second topic on enhanced integrated assessment in pursuit of climate goals. Next slide, please. I'm very pleased to present this topic because we're very keen in the Commission to support integrated assessment because it provides that vital link between the climate science that I was talking about in the previous presentation and the actual pathways and routes towards where we need to be in order to meet our goals, for example, for mitigation and adaptation under the Paris Agreement. And as you probably know, the Paris Agreement really formalizes this link between the best available science and the action you're supposed to take to achieve the goals. In particular, with the 5-yearly global stocktake, the first one being in 2023, and informing the targets that countries have to set themselves after that, which need to be communicated in 2025 for action to happen after 2030. That's a lot of science about global climate change, which countries collectively have to take on board, and then also nationally have to take on board because they have to set their own targets. And then obviously actually taking the action that's consistent with all of this requires all sorts of sectoral and societal insights as well. And certainly, one integrated assessment model isn't going to solve all of those questions, but nevertheless, integrated frameworks are important to, keep some overview of the solutions in a consistent way. And while this science is improving all the time, the policy need is also growing and changing all the time. For example, I think it seems to me that the period 2015 to 2020 more or less established the need to go to net zero emissions eventually at a global level, to stay below 2 degrees and certainly 1.5. Now it's time to actually do it. So even if the science is broadly the same, the needs of the people using it all of a sudden get a lot more sophisticated. So the expected outcomes then are to provide this kind of information to the policymakers who might need it. And to especially to enhance international cooperation, obviously as a global problem with that's being pursued nationally in over 190 countries, it can't be solved entirely within Europe. So peer-to-peer learning in the global scientific community is an important part of this topic. And yeah, coherence between the different tools is also very important, because as I was saying, it's certainly not a question of just making one big model that in an ideal world produces an ideal answer and then walking away. And it's certainly more a question of identifying, the milestones, drivers, and the barriers to actually achieving climate neutrality in an economically, environmentally responsible and socially inclusive way. Okay, next slide, please. Just these are some of the points that are mentioned in the call. I think it's mainly, as I was saying, to do with the fact that the science has been improving at the same time as the policy need has become more sophisticated. And so, it's about making it more usable in terms of to users downstream. This is in a number of ways. So, making integrated assessment models more comparable either to each other or to different types of models, like sectoral models, and also, being able to downscale it to things like major sectors, incorporate things like the land, energy, water nexus, for example, and also, be usable as tools to pursue not only climate change mitigation, but also inform about sustainable development, economic and social impacts more broadly, and also to help grow the European and the global collective capacity to do all of this, because as I was saying, in the end, there's 190 plus policy-making nations with a responsibility to try and act on this kind of evidence. So international cooperation is encouraged. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miles, again. And with that, we move to topic 5, and this topic will be presented by Kasia Drawicka from DG RTD.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Katarzyna Drawicka. I have the pleasure to present to you a topic from Cluster 5, Destination 1, on enhanced understanding of the interactions between mitigation and adaptation efforts. 1 second, I'm uploading my slides. Voila. So the core of the topic in terms of expected outcomes is indeed overcoming the silo approach between how mitigation and adaptation efforts are or have historically been handled. It is also intended to improve understanding of the impacts of climate change and their influence on the feasibility of mitigation pathways. By doing so, the topic is supposed to contribute to increased robustness and legitimacy of integrated assessment frameworks as a key policy support tool, in particular in terms of increasing their relevance for real-world policy and investment decisions. It is also expected to enhance the synergies between the various working groups of Ipcc and to inform the future efforts of mission on adaptation to climate change. All in all, this topic is supposed to result in more effective climate policy interventions in Europe and beyond. As far as the scope of work is concerned, as I already mentioned, the essence of the topic is the integration of various strands of analysis on climate change impacts, risk, adaptation strategies, and mitigation options and pathways into a single framework, including quantifications of these interactions as much as possible. Notably, some adaptation interventions are expected or known to have negative impact on mitigation efforts, and vice versa. Some mitigation pathways and strategies could limit substantially our options in terms of adaptation approaches. So the topic should really look into these interactions. It should also further the integration of climate change impacts into integrated assessment frameworks and analysis of mitigation pathways. Notably, it should integrate state-of-art climate science, climate feedbacks, and issues such as, for example, extreme events, which historically have not been very well addressed or integrated into mitigation pathways analysis. Ultimately, as a next step, projects are expected to formulate recommendations on how to ease the tensions between mitigation and adaptation strategies, and also evaluate the potential benefits that could result from such integrated approaches. By doing this work, the projects are encouraged, for example, to address improvements in adaptation modeling, in particular in areas where adaptation and mitigation strongly interact with each other, such as in energy and agriculture, but also address bottlenecks on the way how to integrate the different scales of mitigation and adaptation efforts, notably the resolution of tools and studies where mitigation and adaptation would typically interact at the local scale. Importantly, the projects should go beyond modeling theory and look into practical implications or practical considerations, and to this end it is encouraged to integrate social sciences and humanities expertise, but also involve stakeholders, end users and practitioners in an active way. Importantly, projects or proposals should pay attention into the additional obligation as regards open science practices, given that the topic is strongly encouraging highest standards in terms of transparency and openness, in particular as far as modeling tools are concerned. And to this end, this additional obligation will be taken into consideration in the evaluation. So proposals that would not address this would be penalized. I think that's it in a nutshell. I wish you best of luck. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Olivia, and enjoy your holiday. As you may have noticed, Olivia is not really live with us, but of course we will also answer questions to this topic if you have any. And with that, we move on to Thomas Kurtz, who will present topic number 5 on standardizing and supporting climate services. Please, Thomas.
Yes, thank you very much, Franz. I'll be presenting topic number 6, actually, on supporting and standardizing climate services. This topic is a coordination and support action. Next slide, please. As it comes or is related to expected outcomes, the following outcomes are all to be met or contributed to. First of all, this is expected to be a support to the implementation of the EU adaptation strategy and the mission on adaptation to climate change. For example, by providing standardized tools for climate proofing or increasing resilience. It is also expected that there will be improved relevance of data, information and knowledge on climate change impacts and adaptation, as well as mitigation for both the users in private areas and the public sector. Thirdly, an enhanced outcome is to enhance the value of the climate services through standards and quality assurance procedures and communication. Again, also the generation of trust across supply and demand of knowledge and services, supporting the development of markets, of a market for climate services, and the European climate service sector is another expected outcome of this topic. Then the enhanced quality, impact, equity, and performance of the European climate services is envisaged to be generated, and the enhanced data and analytical tools for climate impacts, risk, and transition risks, as well as actionable knowledge for the formulation of recommendations, identification, and appraisal of adaptation options, addressing the needs of all stakeholders. And finally, it's also expected to have an outcome on the enhanced coordination and visibility of climate service activities in general. Next slide, please. In terms of scope, this topic is really intended to improve the delivery of quality control and standards for climate services and to guarantee suitability, quality, and performance of digital solutions to manage climate risks and enhance adaptive capacities, covering the following aspects. First, the uncertainty analysis and quality control with supportive case studies at various levels and delivery domains. Second, the preparation of metadata guidelines to document in a comparative and transparent manner related climate services data sources, methodologies, and decision-making. Further, development of good practices, guidance, and standardization of climate information and verification methods for long-term forecast products are also supposed to be covered. Then further, the definition of verification and certification methods for verification methods to enhance quality and usability of climate services, including methods of the evaluation of their effectiveness. Then the coordination and promotion of European climate services and activities. And last but not least, and the scope is also to cover the aspect of the development of appropriate business models and knowledge brokerage activities to support scale-up and replication of climate services. The indicative budget for this topic is 9 million and per project and 9 million overall. Important to note is that in case space information has been used, there is the obligation to use Copernicus, Earth observation, and Galileo information. And further to that, there is particular importance to look at synergies with all relevant activities and to have and ensure an effective contribution of social science and humanities disciplines and expertise in the context of this topic. And with this, thank you. I wish you all the best for the call, and we're looking forward to very interesting proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. And Kasia is back in the next topic, number 7.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Katarzyna Drabicka. It's my great pleasure to present to you a topic from Cluster 5, Destination 1, on improved economic methods for the appraisal of climate and environmental policies. In essence, this topic is very much focused on improvement of toolbox for the decision makers on climate and environmental policies. What is important is to note that it should go beyond the economic aspects of integrated assessment models that typically were at the center of this part of the work program. So it should rather address broader considerations around the frameworks and methodologies for economic assessments. And it should aim at a better reflection of specificities of environmental challenges, including promotion of precautionary responses, but also increasing the ability of policymakers to systematically assess options and their consequences, but also how to deal with uncertainty that is inherent to many environmental challenges. All in all, the topic should result in more effective climate and more broadly environmental policy interventions. In terms of scope, to start with, the focus of this topic is very much on climate change and biodiversity loss, so the economic assessments that can be applied to addressing these challenges. Projects are expected to improve the policy toolbox. So this includes, for example, improvements in cost benefit, cost effectiveness, multi-criteria analysis, but also it is expected that consortia would go beyond these mainstream approaches and look at also at more innovative out-of-the-box options. Projects should also address the typical well-known shortcomings in the mainstream economic thinking, and this could include, for example, the assumptions related to perfectly functioning markets, rational decisions, perfect information, issues related to equity, not least to intergenerational equity, discounting, treatment of damages, and over-reliance on average outcomes versus non-linear features of environmental challenges. As a next stream of work, the projects are expected to investigate the actual performance of a sample of actual policies at European, national, regional level. It's up to projects, but this should be representative to explore the actual realized cost and benefits, and on this basis propose improvements to ex-ante assessments. Then another task consists in the evaluation of different types of regulatory interventions, market-based versus command and control, and then within these categories different options as well. In addition, softer interventions, for example, information-based, but also more innovative approaches related to different types of incentives that could address both supply and demand side in accelerating the transition. As regards the more cross-cutting issues, it is expected that the consortia are truly transdisciplinary to integrate insights from different disciplines, so not only hard economics, but also very much social sciences and humanities in terms of behavioral aspects, sociology, political economics, to also bring in the considerations on different aspects that influence policies, decision-making and their feasibility, a lot of focus on co-creation and involvement of various stakeholders, and finally also a lot of emphasis should be put on the dissemination plan towards decision makers to test the proposed solutions, and also towards academia to integrate the findings into the curricula. I think this is in the nutshell. Thank you very much for your attention and best of luck for your proposals.
Thank you very much, Kasia. And with that, we move on to next topic, number 8 from Karin, and this will be presented by Karin Zaunberger from DG Environment. Please, Karin, here you are.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's my pleasure to present to you the topic on restoration of natural wetlands and peatlands and floodplains as a strategy for fast mitigation benefits, pathways, trade-offs, and co-benefits. The political context in which this topic is to be seen is the strengthening the climate change biodiversity nexus, increase our knowledge on this very important space, and to support the implementation of the EU's biodiversity strategy that was adopted during last May in 2020. Where it was clearly identified that next to the protection of biodiversity and ecosystems, we also need to restore the ecosystems, and in order to make sure that their crucial services, notably also the climate service, continues to be delivered. Now, this topic is clearly in support to the EU Nature Restoration Plan that's embedded in the biodiversity strategy. And at the moment, as a follow-up to the biodiversity strategy, there's the EU Nature Law is in preparation, and we think that this particular project will also contribute to the implementation of this EU's nature law. We hope that this improved assessment and added value of wetland, peatland, and floodplain restoration approaches shall be shown under different scenarios, and their benefits and trade-offs need to be monitored in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and removals, in climate change adaptation, and disaster risk reduction. We want to improve the knowledge base on the status of European wetlands beyond the current state of the art, on extent, location, conditions, spatio-temporal trends, the type of management, the pressures, including climate change, but not only, as well as to understand fully the restoration potential in terms of their capacity to serve as carbon sinks, and also to see the trade-off between the carbon sinks and the carbon sources. We need to analyze the degree to which these approaches are related to wetlands and how they are affected by the different scenarios of climate change. We also want to see how this can support the implementation of the land use and land use change and forestry regulation with respect to the inclusion of wetland restoration activities by developing robust and transparent methodologies, data provision, and analysis. We see the scope of this is to assess the current extent and state of European wetlands, their current and potential greenhouse gas profile, with or without protection and restoration measures, and their medium to long-term mitigation capacity through restoration or other measures. As a minimum, the assessment should take into account the key greenhouse gases, CO2, methane, and nitrate oxide. The carbon value of these services, such as production and the baselines, for example, food production and restoration scenarios. Paludicultures or non-productive uses like agritourism should also be included. We need to identify workable tools and approaches for the sound estimation of the greenhouse gas performance, as well as the impacts on biodiversity and the range of ecosystem services. Now, these projects are expected to go beyond the state of the art of the different restoration and management techniques already known, and provide knowledge and guides and recommendation about the scaling up of the solutions. We know that we have to do a lot more than we are currently doing, and hence it's important to get advice, guidance on how we can achieve this acceleration and scaling up of implementation. These projects should capitalize on the evidence that is provided by LIFE and Horizon 2020, and also projects carried out under the regional and structural funds that have been addressing wetlands and floodplains and peatland restoration and protections. These actions should envisage clustering activities with other relevant selected for cross-project cooperation, consultations and joint activities on the cross-cutting issues, and share of results, as well as participating in joint meeting and communication events. Therefore, we think that this topic requires the effective contribution also of the social sciences and humanities disciplines and the involvement of these experts. We foresee the total amount of budget dedicated to this topic is 20 million, and we foresee that one project should go up to 6 or 7 million. With this, I really wish all the best to those who want to bid for this call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karin. And we move on to the final presentation from this part of the session, and this will be presented by Adrian Tistan.
Hi, I'm Adrian Tischjan, a policy officer in DGRTD, the Bioeconomy and Food Systems Unit, and today I'm going to present to you a topic of Cluster 5, Destination 1 on the contribution of forest management to climate action, pathways, trade-offs, and co-benefits. This is a research and innovation action with a total budget of 80 million euros, with an estimate of 6 million euros per project. Therefore, it is envisioned to fund a total of 3 projects. The JRC may participate as a member of the consortia, and in case the project uses satellite-based Earth observation, there is a requirement for the beneficiaries to make use of Copernicus or Galileo services. As for the expected outcomes of projects under this topic, the topic is divided into 2 focus areas. The first one being assessment of forest climate mitigation pathways. The expected outcome there is to improve decision-making by public authorities on forest policy by improving their understanding of the potential and limits of forest and the forest-based bioeconomy in delivering climate benefits. This would be achieved by improving forest climate modeling, which would take into account risks related to climate change, the biogeochemical responses of forests to environmental and management changes. It would take into account the climate effects of forest adaptation practices and needs, such as the conversion of conifer monocultural plantation into a multi-species, diverse, stable forest. The condition of changing forest health, the biophysical factors such as the evapotranspiration rates of forest and the albedo effect of forest, and also the substitution effect of forest products, which including by looking at the changes of the substitution effect over time due to changes to the counterfactual reference scenario. This second focus area is on high resolution forest carbon pool monitoring and reporting, where the expected outcome is to improve the accuracy and robustness of methods for monitoring and reporting of forest carbon pools under the UNFCCC. And this will have as an effect a better understanding of the evolution of the forest sink, and it will be achieved through a development and improvement of novel methodologies for reporting and monitoring through a combination of in situ data collection and remote sensing methods. And it will include a focus on interactions between the different forest carbon pools, such as the living biomass pool and the dead wood and the litter and the soil organic carbon pool. For the scope, in a bit more detailed way, the first focus area of the topic on the EU forest greenhouse gas balance pathways, these should really be set in the context of the reviewed 2030 and 2050 EU climate targets, and it should look at the potential of the contribution of forests to these targets, while taking into account the biodiversity goals, such as those set out in the biodiversity strategy, 2030 biodiversity strategy, goals such as increasing the strictly protected areas and promoting close to nature forestry. So looking at the synergies and trade-offs in terms of climate impact. It should also look at the mitigation potential and opportunity costs of afforestation and other forest management activities, such as shortening or extending the rotation lengths and changing the intensity of thinning. Should look at, as already discussed, the adaptation needs and climate-related risks related to forest stability and health. So there is susceptibility of certain forests to natural disturbances and the related emissions to that. It should consider the climate mitigation potential of forest bioeconomy, as we already mentioned, the substitution effect of products, as well as the carbon storage property of certain long-lived wood products. And it should, last but not least, look at the role and limits of forest bioenergy in contributing to the renewable energy targets. For the second focus area, for the support for higher tier and accuracy monitoring and reporting methodologies, this should be done mainly by filling existing gaps that exist due to a bias towards the most economically relevant tree species currently and the most relevant carbon pools. And in this, remote sensing data can be helpful in verifying forest biomass gains and losses, can be helpful in verifying the forest area changes, as well as forest health status, including impact of natural disturbances. And it can also be used to identify carbon-rich forests, such as old growth or primary forests. And the sample-based methods, on the other hand, can be used to support monitoring of changes, in particular in soil organic carbon in mineral and organic soils, with a focus on the impact of forest management on these carbon fluxes. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So with this, we have presented all topics from the first call of Destination 1. That's the 2021 call. This call will close on the 14th of September. That's pretty soon. But I hope that you have still time to prepare a very good proposal. We have now about 10 minutes for questions. I also like to mention that you can always also submit questions to the research inquiry service that you can find on the funding and tenders portal for Horizon Europe. So you can always reach us through this mean. And one more thing I'd like to mention again, that for these two topics, the first topic on greenhouse gases and the other one on maximizing the impact, there are subtopics. Please indicate in the abstract to which area, A, B, C or A, B, your proposal refers to, or your application. We talk now about applications. With that, we start the Q&A session. And as you can see, you can vote for a question and we go by the most popular question. And the first one by Clémence Gracia is on topic 115. And I would hope that maybe Frederick can answer that. How many case studies are expected? Frederick? Anybody else? I cannot hear you. Alessia? All right. I'm not sure if it's not working that way. So the place and the number of case studies is really up to you. Please read carefully the text. I don't think it really says clearly how many and where. Motivate why and where and which case studies you need to do. That's very important to give a good rationale, why and where you want to do this to achieve the biggest impact, to achieve the outcomes that you want to achieve. And that will be assessed this way.
And second compliment, if you want, on this
yes,
one.
Yes, please.
Yeah, indeed, there's a mention of some sector, but there are examples. So, of course, you can retain this example as a relevant one, but this doesn't preclude you to come up with different sectors and case studies, as Franz was said, as long as this is justified by the relevance, and you have to do yourself in the application, indeed.
Thank you, Alessia. You look really spooky on my screen. I hope you look better out there. Thanks. Okay, then the next question, Ipcc. I think I can answer that one. So as an expected impact of the destination, it says that you should contribute to these international assessments such as the Ipcc, but it also can be other ones like the IPBS or other, but it's really important policy relevant international assessments. So all of them are good, and indeed biodiversity and climate is linked. The next question I think I can also take. So each proposal, each application will be assessed and evaluated in its own merits and shortcomings. And we don't look for complementarity of the consortia. That will not be part of the evaluation. Okay, then we have topic number 1, 2, and that hopefully can be answered by 1, 2. Sorry, Olivia is not here. Maybe Alessia. No, sorry, Jesus. This is for Jesus. Are you still there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Jesus?
Yes.
So the question is, what is meant by existing models, and are some specific models which should be improved? Can you name which models you want to have improved?
So there are different models that modelize, let's say, the circular economy and the impacts on climate. I mentioned 2 in my presentation that were, I would say, seminal, the one of the CITRA and material economics, the international resource panels, but this is a list that is not comprehensive. Also, if you look at the papers, you can find different models. So this is not, we don't want the projects necessarily to improve what already exists. They can start from scratch. They can follow other approaches. But of course, this is a little bit the literature review that they have to carry out in their study. So this is not something that is determined. I mentioned 2 examples. It could be others perfectly.
Thank you, Jesus. And with that, we move to the next question. I think that's from Miles on the greenhouse gases. Which one do you want to be addressed?
What am I looking at here? What are the expectations in terms of practical applications?
No, the call is very broad. The question says, covering greenhouse gases and aerosols, can projects therefore focus on a subset of species?
Right, okay. Sorry, it wasn't clear to me. I don't think I did.
Sorry,
what I was talking about.
This is a 22 topic.
Yes, it's the 22 topic. It's for the next session.
Okay, indeed. So we keep that one for the next session. We have a similar topic in 21. That's why I was confused. Sorry, Miles.
That's fine.
Bear with us and be prepared for this question a bit later. So what are expectations in terms of practical applications? Again, topic 5.
I guess this is for me, Franz.
Yeah,
indeed. While the topic is addressing a knowledge gap, so some new knowledge has to be brought together. This knowledge is highly relevant for policy making. So the translation of this knowledge in practical application is what is required. The topic is not prescriptive in terms of tool or on how this has to be done, but this is nonetheless a very important aspect of the topic. So applicants should take into account not only going beyond state of the art on knowledge, on making this knowledge available for decision making.
Thank you, Alessia. Then we have for topic 2 a question. So again, Jesus, to ask, so call asks to represent basic value chains. Please let us know, what do you mean by basic? Global value chain, industry, or company level?
Let me see again the wording, the exact wording in the text of basic industrial value chain. Yes, the question is very, very good and welcome, because it's clear that this in the text is not very, very clear. Here we are talking more about a macro approach, so calculating the different the impacts on climate of different circular value chains at macro level. So I would go towards this direction, but this said, we have to be close to what is requested. In this case, what is requested is rather vague. So correct me if I'm wrong, Franz, but we cannot do an interpretation that is not really clear in the work program. So if a proposal is more micro, I think this is perfectly acceptable.
Okay, indeed, we have to be careful not to interpret. But maybe there's another question, externalities. Can you, what is meant by that?
Yes, let me again see where it is mentioned. I'm going to do a search to find it. where was it? So in general, you know, it's an economic term about the impacts that are not expected. So externalities, for example, of the policies on, in this case, it could be air pollution and other aspects. I'm checking in the work program again how it is used exactly. Externality. Yes, support the integration of the circular economy into climate action policies under evidence base, including externalities. So in this case, it's clearly to look at different impacts, even if the focus is circular economy and climate, there could be other impacts, for example, on air quality or on biodiversity. So this is something that you can or you should also assess. But of course, this is not the core of the project that we are expecting, but it refers to this. I hope it's clear.
Thanks, Jesus. We have, I'm afraid we have more questions than we can answer now. Because
which means that it was not well drafted. So I'm sorry for this.
That's always the problem. But of course, there's room for interpretation and please put good rationale behind if you choose certain models, if you choose certain methods, why you use them, and then it should be well evaluated, I guess. So I think we have to close this session again, answering one more question. Yes, please answer put your questions in the research inquiry service if we couldn't answer it today. And we will answer it later on. If we see questions, we will keep the questions. If we see questions that I think we need to answer for all applicants, we will put them also in the call updates. So you will please keep an eye on the call updates on the funding and tender portals for the specific topics. There's also FAQs there. Please have a look in the next month before the call deadline. If you find more relevant information for you there. So please keep always an eye on the portal and on the topic. With that, I would like to move to the next set of topics. So now we talk about the 2022 call. And there's two calls, one single stage and one two-stage call. And we start with the two-stage. And the first topic there will be presented by Zoltan. Please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's my pleasure to present to you the topic on carbon dioxide removal approaches. My name is Zoltan Rakoncai, and I'm a policy officer in DG Research and Innovation. In the way of introducing the topic and its policy context, we have to remind ourselves that carbon dioxide removal is increasingly seen as an essential or at least very likely to be necessary component of future mitigation pathways, as most scenarios that reach the Paris Agreement goals rely increasingly on such approaches, and that provides the framework for this topic. In terms of expected outcomes, some of the following items should be addressed by projects. First, the enhanced understanding of carbon dioxide removal options in terms of their technical readiness, key requirements in terms of land and other resource needs, geographical and geological constraints, primary energy needs, and so on. Short and long-term sequestration potential, permanence, impacts, including potential co-benefits. Support climate models and integrated assessment models through an improved characterization, quantification of these technologies and solutions, allowing their better integration into pathways. A methodology for the characterization and comparison of such technologies and the barriers to their deployment, which can facilitate public discourse acceptability. Apologies. To gain better insight into the extended system-level impacts of these technologies, which should include issues like ripple effects and rebound effects. To develop abatement cost estimates in function of time profile, as well as factors like scale of deployment, key input factors like land requirements, land prices, energy, reservoirs for storage, and so on. The exploration and demonstration of business policy and MRV frameworks, so it's monitoring, reporting and verification frameworks for carbon dioxide removal uptake at scale, ranging from plant level, individual installation level, to incorporation of such approaches in international MRV systems and accounting. In terms of the scope, the action must estimate the potential scale, cost and effectiveness of nature-based and technical CDR methods based on technical readiness, resource and energy needs, geographical constraints, sequestration potential, key impacts such as environmental, social, health and resource impacts and risks. Allow the better parameterization of integrated assessment models with respect to removals, as well as better policy design. Explore efficient governance frameworks to facilitate the uptake of carbon dioxide removal at scale, including social acceptance, ethical and regulatory considerations, monitoring, reporting and verification and accounting systems. The analysis should be based on practical experiences, including with the implementation of relevant land projects, also pilot projects of new technologies, theoretical analysis and review, including system level impacts through consequential analysis, including opportunity costs. Interactions are encouraged with other related topics, included climate ecosystem interactions in Destination 1, topics on carbon capture and utilization in Destinations 2 and 3, and marine topics in Cluster 6. And the topic requires the effective contribution of social science and humanities disciplines. As you can see, the indicative budget is approximately 7 million euros per project, and altogether 21 million, which means we are expecting to fund 3 projects under this topic. And the important condition is that the projects must make use of Copernicus Earth observation products, as well as Galileo and EGNOS, if such services are used. And other services, similar services, can also be used, but these European products must be made use of. Thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to your project proposals.
Thank you, Zoltan. And with that, we move to Kasia to present the next topic on the impacts of climate change.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Katarzyna Drawicka. This time I will present the topic on socioeconomic risks of climate change in Europe. So basically the essence of this topic is on improving the state-of-art understanding on the impacts of climate change across sectors, across impact categories, and with improved geographical spatial resolution to inform the decisions of public and private sector stakeholders, notably the investment decisions that are needed for the transition towards climate neutral, climate resilient economy. We also expect or hope to improve the complementarity of research work by various teams. An example notably in the context of the study by our colleagues from JRC, so-called PESETA. Ultimately, we expect that the work under this topic would contribute to more effective and more ambitious policy interventions based on improved understanding of the risk, absent ambitious mitigation and adaptation efforts. As regards the scope of work, the focus of the topic is on physical climate risks across different timescales, 2030, 2050 and 2100, and with different warming scenarios. The work should look at the range of outcomes, so not just most likely average outcomes, but also include low probability, high impact events, notably indirect impacts, as well as cascading ones from other parts of the world. And notably, the analysis should articulate the costs of inaction as a powerful argument for ambitious policy interventions. Another strand of work is the analysis of costs and benefits of ambitious mitigation and adaptation interventions, as well as improved understanding of risks that are unlikely to be avoided even with these ambitious interventions, and hence might deserve different type of responses. An important area of work is also expansion of existing impact categories by extending research into less researched, less well understood ones, in particular those with no direct market values, such as notably human health, social justice, or natural capital. Monetization is also important. As we know, what is not monetized is sometimes invisible to policymakers, so the topic should address this issue as well, and also should take into account the interactions between various impact categories and combine them into a coherent framework. It should also look into how to progress of discourse around handling uncertainty, in particular in the context of extreme events or tipping points. As regards geographical distribution, we aim at national and as much as possible subnational level to capture the differences in terms of local capabilities, risks, exposures, vulnerabilities, etc. Distributional and equity considerations are important as input to just climate transition. And as regards more cross-cutting dimension, projects could address improvements in adaptation modeling, in particular in the categories that are less developed or with highest potential damages. They could have recourse to digital capabilities such as artificial intelligence or other advanced techniques. They could address economy-wide damage function. An approach that should be taken should be fully interdisciplinary, and when dealing with models, there is an additional requirement that should be paid attention to. This means that open access is requested to new models, modules and tools developed from scratch or substantially changed as part of this project, of this topic, and basically, if it's not addressed, it will have implications in the evaluation process. So this in the nutshell. Best of luck, bon chance with proposals.
Thank you very much, Kasia. And with that, we have the last topic of this call, again presented by Zoltan.
Yes, thank you again.
Please keep the time because we're a bit behind schedule.
And thank you again, and hello again. It's again Zoltan Rakonzai from RTD. This time to present another two-stage topic, which is social science for land use strategies in the context of climate change and biodiversity challenges. In the way of a short introduction to the context, we have to recognize the increasingly important role that land use plays in our scenarios and in our mitigation strategies, not just explicitly, for instance, as future carbon sinks, but also implicitly as a provider of essential raw materials and energy needs. This topic should address the following outcomes, all of the following points: a characterization of future expected land use patterns consistent with long-term objectives, especially on climate, biodiversity, and renewable energy, and its comparison with the current situation and present trends on these issues. A comprehensive understanding of the key motivations and drivers, such as economic, regulatory, legal, cultural, environmental factors, behind land use related decisions in Europe at levels ranging from individual landowners to public authorities at local, regional, or national level, as well as their relative importance. A better understanding of the awareness of key actors, such as landowners, managers, local authorities, regulatory agencies, about climate change and biodiversity challenges, as well as their willingness to contribute to the efforts to address these challenges, including the adoption of new or different practices consistent with long-term expectations. Support to climate policies such as mitigation and adaptation and biodiversity policy design and implementation through economic and behavioral insights, allowing the efficient targeting of incentives and engagement of stakeholders in a cost-effective manner, taking into account long-distance impacts through displacement effects and other similar economic drivers. Regarding the scope, actions should aim to gain a realistic understanding of the factors behind land use decisions and how they can be best oriented towards the efficient and socially responsible pursuit of multiple policy objectives on various scales. They should develop a toolbox of instruments and approaches deployable at different levels, consistent with long-term goals. Actions should focus on one or more of the following issues: scenarios and models for optimizing the contribution of land to relevant policy objectives, economic and behavioral insights into land use related decisions, efficient design of incentives, delivery mechanisms that could best incentivize the upscaling of the required changes, develop workable models for effective and efficient monitoring and incentivizing public goods benefits such as emission reductions, biodiversity protection, and water services. Contribute to the better quantification of land-related greenhouse gas flux trajectories for integrated assessment models or relevant scales, including displacement effects. As shown from the indicative budget, we expect to fund 3 projects under this topic with 6 to 7 million euros each. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Zoltan. There's a question. So we finished this call. So the call deadline for this one is the 10th of February. And it's a two-stage call, so there will be another deadline later on. Let me check, on the 27th of September. So first deadline, 10th of February 22, and then 27th of September for the full proposal. So there's a question to this topic, Sultan. Is it allowed to focus on certain land use strategies or on certain type of regions, for example, coastal? Or
yes, some degree of focus is possible, but applicants should keep in mind that the expected outcomes which are specified in the topic, all of those points must be addressed by all proposals. But while doing so, it is certainly possible and in fact desirable to have a certain focus either geographically or in a thematic way to have a well-rounded, reasonable sized project.
Thanks. There's another question on this topic, which is quite a general question. What is meant here exactly with transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research? No, sorry, transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary.
I would think it's a very valid question because the two terms are very much related, if not interchangeable. So
but maybe I can answer. We use these terms normally. Interdisciplinary means between two scientific disciplines.
Yeah.
Can be chemistry or biology, or can be social science. And transdisciplinary includes other actors in the knowledge arena, for example, citizens or stakeholders, users. So to involve these other players, the non-scientific players, then we talk about transdisciplinary approach. Correct?
Thank you.
Okay, then do we have other questions on this call? Frederick? I don't see one. It's all for the other. D112.
Indeed. Yep. No questions on this call.
Two-stage. Here's one from Soul Stage. Would only technological advancement and CO2 be accepted within proposals? Changing forest management, is that also part of the call?
Which, sorry, I'm lost. Which
from
question?
Sultan Kuhn.
Yes. Yes, in case of, yeah, the two-stage with technological advancement ideas be welcome. No, the CDR, so the carbon dioxide removal topic, includes both technological and land use related options. So both of them are in the scope. So certainly changes to forest management could be part of it.
Thank you. I think then we have answered all questions specifically to this call. There's one more down here for land use decisions. Could it be also land use in urban area linked with biodiversity and NBS in the cities for the land use decision?
Yes, I would certainly see it as part of the scope potentially, but at the same time, it shouldn't be the focus because there are dedicated calls on that subject. That's one of the reasons. The other reason is that one main objective of this topic is to look at the opportunities for and challenges in upscaling these actions to the level that is necessary for achieving our long-term objectives in terms of mitigation. And that is unlikely to be primarily in urban areas. So the focus should most likely be on land other than urban areas, but they can make a useful contribution, so they should certainly be part of the consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we move on to the last call. So the second call for 2022, which is a single stage call, and there we have 5 topics. And the first one will again be presented by Sultan, and that's on verification and reconciliation of estimates of climate forces.
Thank you very much, Franz. And at the risk of becoming repetitive, it's me again, this time presenting this topic on verification and reconciliation of estimates of climate forces. This is another research and innovation action. In terms of the expected outcomes, all of the following points should be addressed by proposals. Enhancing the ability to ascertain whether and to what extent emission reduction efforts are producing the desired atmospheric signals for key greenhouse gases on relevant spatial and temporal scales. Better understanding of apparent discrepancies between reported greenhouse gas emissions and removals, measured atmospheric signals, and modeled levels, with the aim of reducing and reconciling them on the long run. Reduce uncertainty of national greenhouse gas inventories through improved comparability with models and observations, and piloting top-down approaches, such as those recognized in the 2019 refinement of the Ipcc 2006 guidelines for national greenhouse gas inventories. The contribution to improving the attribution of greenhouse gas fluxes, most importantly, the separation of anthropogenic versus natural emissions and removals, as well as non-greenhouse gas atmospheric climate forces, such as aerosols, including feedbacks. Support the Paris Agreement, in particular its global stocktake process, and the implementation and monitoring of EU climate policy instruments and their implementation. And provide input such as open data, models, methods, and protocols, and contributions to international programs and assessments, such as Ipcc or the Global Carbon Project. Once again, I would like to emphasize that all these outcomes should be addressed, but that doesn't mean that all of them must include all of the issues listed, such as some of the points include open lists. And I'm mentioning this in response to the question that was asked earlier before the break in the previous session on Slido. In terms of the scope, reconciling national greenhouse gas inventories with relevant assessments and monitoring systems at a range of scales. Aerosols and their precursors should also be included, as well as other air pollutants. The use of top-down techniques can support the verification of national greenhouse gas inventories and other regulated estimates of emissions and removals. These can be, for instance, installation level estimates or like municipalities, if they have such commitments, in order to improve or supplement the methods approaches currently used. Ideally, case studies in collaboration with one or more national inventory compilers would be envisioned. Decrease uncertainties, identify and constrain irreducible differences, and improve the attribution of emissions and removals. Address the need for versatility of applications, mobile sources, individual point sources, land, and so on, relevant to current and potential future reporting and compliance systems, open data standards, transfer of information and tools. The replicability of tools outside Europe, mainly in developing countries, should also be addressed. An important condition is that proposals, projects must make use of Copernicus Earth observation products, as well as Galileo and EGNOS, to the extent such services are relevant to the projects, although other services can also be utilized. And as indicated in the budget, we expect to fund 3 projects under this topic. Thank you very much, and we are looking forward to your excellent proposals.
Thanks, Sultan. And with that, I hand over to Jean Dusart, who will present the next topic, and right after, then Kasia again with topic 3 of that call. Please.
Good morning. I will have the pleasure in the coming minutes to present you the topic on the development of high-resolution Earth system models for global and regional climate change projections. This is a research and innovation action. What is the policy context? There is a need to improve European high-resolution, fully coupled atmosphere, ocean, land, Earth system models. The need to simulate key climate processes, their versatility and future trends. Enhance the quality and robustness and versatility of climate projections on a range of scales. That way, we can help supporting policies implementing the goals of the Paris Agreement and address the societal needs and respond to the adverse impacts of climate change. Being a topic under Destination 1 of Cluster 5, there are the following related impacts: transition to a climate neutral and resilient society and economy enabled through advanced climate science, pathways and response to climate change, both mitigation and adaptation, and behavioral transformation. All the following expected outcomes have to be met: improve climate projections with sound uncertainty estimates under different scenarios on different temporal and spatial scales. Improve understanding and modeling of tipping points in the climatic system, such as the ice sheets at both poles and ocean circulations. Advance in attribution of climate change and its phenomena to anthropogenic forces. Support to the evaluation of mitigation policies through improved linkage with integrated assessment models. Pave the way for the next cycle of Ipcc assessment reports by a leading role in the WCIP Copper Model Intercomparison Project, and sustain and enhance European cooperation and leadership in climate science. What is the scope of the call? Foster a fully coupled atmosphere, ocean, land, Earth system model, make efficient use of available and high quality observational data for the development of robust model validation, verification, and improve uncertainty estimation methodologies. Reduce uncertainty of key parameters of climate and hydrological systems, support the attribution of observed and project climatic hazards to climate change or climate variability, promote the highest standards of transparency and openness, cooperate with other projects. The indicative budget for this call is 20 million euro in total, and we expect projects reaching a total amount of 10 million euro. Important, the use of Copernicus Earth observation data is encouraged, as well as the liaison with the Destination Earth initiative. We promote open access to new modules, models, and tools, and encourage international cooperation. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Katarzyna Drawicka. This time I will present a topic on improvement of integrated assessment models in support of climate policy objectives. So as you all know, the support for Paris Agreement objectives has actually never been greater. It's at all times high. Some 2/3 of global emissions come from countries that have committed to net zero by 2050, but the real challenge will be around implementation. And integrated assessment models can play a very powerful role in guiding policy decisions in this respect. So it's very important to get them right. And it's not about building a perfect model, which is likely impossible, but about striking the right balance between complexity, realism, and usefulness. We expect that the outcomes will contribute to the implementation of European Green Deal and the broader sustainability agenda, and also contribute to major scientific assessments such as Ipcc or IPBES. An important aspect is around promotion of transparency and openness of integrated assessment models, whereas additional open science obligations apply, which require open access to be granted to any new models or tools developed from scratch or substantially altered as part of these projects. And we expect that this will contribute to emergence of new business models around IAMS, and is certainly justified for public funding and public intervention in this area. As another outcome, we also expect increased coherence between various policy objectives, notably other aspects of climate action beyond mitigation, but also policies such as biodiversity. And notably, this should cover issues such as co-benefits, trade-offs, and conflict between various objectives. We also expect better integration of societal dimension as a key feature for increasing realism of integrated assessment models. As far as scope is concerned, so basically the objective is to improve the state of art of integrated assessment models by tackling their key weaknesses. And this does not mean addressing all issues that are mentioned in the topic descriptions or incorporating them into a single mega model. On the contrary, there might be a good case for a suite of more specialized models to tackle different issues and then combining them in a more coherent whole. And some examples of themes that could be tackled is improved resolution or sectorial detail, alternative approaches to mainstream economic assumptions, so all things around perfect and rational choices, so oversimplification, but also behavioral aspects and issues related to distributional and equity effects of climate policies to reflect their social realities and how these policies basically create winners and losers, because it's a key development or key requirement to develop politically durable strategies, and also a key issue that affects public acceptance. Also, what is important is that the list of examples in the description is non-exhaustive. Actions may also propose other new avenues of research, but always keeping in mind IAM's relevance and adequacy for real-world policies and investment choices, and also accounting for difficult political trade-offs across different objectives. Another aspect is integration of learnings that emerged from the COVID pandemic, exploring how to make models more capable to respond to external shocks, but also addressing public acceptance issues. Finally, projects should investigate novel communication approaches to improve interaction with various stakeholders, so not just policymakers, but also business and civil society, to facilitate the transition and accelerate the transformation around the societal, different societal aspects. And we would expect active involvement of various end users. Finally, it would be useful if projects explore possibilities to build on results from existing Horizon 2020 projects in this realm, and also establish links with other projects resulting from topics in Destination 1 with links to modeling, such as those around interlinkages between mitigation and adaptation or circular economy. So this is in the nutshell. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you best of luck in your applications.
Thank you, Kasia, again. And we move on with Thomas for the next topic, topic number 4. Thomas, I'm always confused.
Yes, good afternoon. Now with me presenting the topic number 4 of this call in 22 on the supporting the formulation of adaptation strategies through improved climate predictions in Europe and beyond. If I may have my slides, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. So as you can see, this is a research and innovation action. And then coming to the expected outcomes, which will be on the next slide, you will see that this topic is intended to address all of the following expected outcomes, which include the support to the implementation of the new adaptation strategy of the European Union and the mission on adaptation to climate change through better access to improved knowledge about climate impacts and fit-for-purpose data on individual and collective climate risks for all levels of government and stakeholders. The reduced vulnerability to climate change impacts based on decadal predictions, which are a key source of information for better planning and adaptation options. Further, the improved assessment of risks for people and systems exposed to extreme weather and climate events, the enhanced scientific collaboration and exploitation of synergies across the EU and associated countries for the provision of climate information to stakeholders engaged in the implementation of the EU adaptation strategy. And then last but not least, the expected outcomes are also to cover the enhanced European cooperation and leadership in climate sciences, for example, in the frame of the Euro Codex initiative, which is a part of the World Climate Research Program's coordinated regional climate downscaling experiment project called Codex. In terms of scope, the next slide, please. In terms of the scope, the projects are to aim at improving seasonal and decadal predictions to boost their quality at regional to local scale, in particular for Europe and for variables of high societal relevance. They are also to cover the enabling of progress in the closing of the gap between current skill and potential predictability estimates, as well as better aligning with immediate adaptation needs of end users and making those predictions actionable. They are also supposed to cover the development of methodologies to merge simulations from long-term weather forecasts to climate predictions and projections, and to improve assessments of risks through extreme climate-related events on a range of temporal and spatial scales, as well as early detection of tipping points. Further, the projects are to cover the exploration of novel ways of coupling existing impact models with climate models to provide quality forecasts at local scale. Then also to develop the guidance on selection and aggregation of model data for local impact assessments. And last but not least, the scope of these projects are to cover or address the insurance of the dissemination of project results to policymakers and stakeholders to support long-term planning. The indicative budget of this topic is 20 million in total. And as you can see, we are expecting 2 projects to be funded in this because we think 10 million per project is probably enough to cover these points. Important to note is that if projects use satellite-based Earth observation or positioning navigation and time data services, beneficiaries must make use of Copernicus and of Galileo services, while of course other data and services may still be used in addition. Also in this case, we would like to see an effective contribution of social science and humanities disciplines and expertise and experts. And with this, I finalize the presentation of this, and we're looking forward to good proposals on this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. And topic, last but not least, please, Karin.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's my pleasure to introduce the topic D10205, Let Nature Help Do the Job, Rewilding Landscapes for Carbon Sequestration, Climate Adaptation and Biodiversity Support. This topic, like the topic on restoration, is embedded in the biodiversity strategy, but also in the adaptation strategy, looking at increasing the ecosystem services that can be delivered through leaving nature doing the job. This action is actually amongst the so-called fair action, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. We hope that these projects will make a contribution to both Ipcc and Ipcc in order to achieve the objectives of reaching net zero carbon emissions, enhancing climate change adaptation, and contributing to the achievement of the EU biodiversity strategy. We want to demonstrate the degree to which these approaches are affected by climate change itself, and if they can still be effective under global warming of 2 degrees and higher. We need to keep this into mind, so which means we're doing this research while change is happening faster and faster. We need to demonstrate the potential of the contribution of European abandoned land and protected area systems for carbon sequestration, adaptation to and/or mitigation of climate change. We find this will also be very important in order to attempt to minimize the increasing risk of wildfires due to changing climate. Very important in this particular topic on rewilding is to assess the perception and acceptability of citizens and stakeholders on rewilding and rewilding options, and identifying potential conflicts and trade-offs for governance and decision-making. This topic is again very important in related to the climate change biodiversity nexus, as it tries to bring both challenges together and address them in an integrated manner. Rewilding here is meant as a passive management of ecological succession with the goal of restoring natural ecosystem processes and reducing human control of landscapes, although some intervention may be required. These actions should investigate how this rewilding can be complemented with other approaches. For example, active restoration and conservation, low-intensity farming, forestry and pest management, and taking into account specific regional conditions to increase carbon sequestration, improve biodiversity conservation, and ensure the provision of goods and ecosystem services. These actions should significantly advance our knowledge on the role and the relevance of restoring fully functional trophic change, notably, for instance, through the conservation management and the reintroduction of so-called apex predators like the wolf, for example, but also grazers and scavengers in the rewilding process. We need to have a look also at the challenges and barriers to this aim, and this should be analyzed with the involvement of social sciences and humanities, which is recommended to be part of this work. It shall also include the work of ongoing initiatives and platforms such as Climate Adapt, Network Nature, OPLA, and Biodiversa. As already said, this topic requires the effective contribution of the social sciences and humanities. For the topic, the budget available is 17 million, and we think one project would probably be around 8 and 9 million. With this, I wish you all the best and we're looking forward to receiving successful proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karin. Now we are a bit 10 minutes late, and unfortunately we don't have much time left for questions. I will try to still, if we have the time, to still address some. Sultan, for your topic, the question was that it's very broad and whether they can focus on a subset of climate forces.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Yes, this is what I tried to refer to, but I didn't quite answer the question. The outcomes listed must all be addressed, so there is little room to maneuver. On the other hand, it doesn't mean that all forces must be given an equal weight. So in terms of the scope, there is quite a bit of room to focus the proposals on certain areas. So consortia should use their best judgment to provide us with well-rounded proposals, and there will be three projects so that they can cover.
Indeed, it is absolutely okay to focus. There's a question for Karin. The first one is on interdisciplinary. I think that was clear. Of course, yes, it should be interdisciplinary. As I say, it should be involved. That's what Karin already said. On the issue of citizens' perception of tidal flats, there's a similar question. Do tidal flats represent an interesting ecosystem, Karin? What do you think about tidal flats?
Thank you for both of these questions. Actually, I think both are very interesting topics, but I would expect them rather to be part of a bigger consortium. I would not see it as a standalone project, just like as a very quick answer, but I might be wrong, but both are definitely touching on very, very important issues in this context.
Okay, thank you. Again, a question, the topics are very broad and whether they could focus. Okay, I'm really sorry. Please forward your questions to the Research Inquiry Service. We will answer all questions. And thanks for everyone for attending. I'm really sorry that we run a bit late, but it was a bit tight schedule. So thanks everybody for attending this afternoon, and I hope to see your proposals and look forward to evaluate and you see the results for the first call this year still, I hope. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Goodbye. And thanks to all the speakers.
Thank you.